thought the drama between Justin and Usher was just another celebrity argument. But what if that explosive moment was actually the surface of something much darker that's been hidden for years?
I don't have anything negative to say about Sean Combs because my experience was not what the world has seen and how he's been, misrepresented.
Being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
30 years, I've done nothing but collect information, knowledge, and your secrets. So if you and a man was in a corner doing something you wasn't supposed to be doing...
You would tell it?
No, somebody come to tell me.
Okay.
I gather that, I value that, I'll pay for that.
Puff and Usher did have a situation. And that situation led Usher to the hospital. Now I let Usher explain that to y'all. I let Usher tell that story.
And just like that, the silence was shattered. Because when everything started coming out, it didn't trickle, it flooded. Suddenly, names that once felt untouchable were being dragged into conversations nobody expected. And right in the middle of it all, Justin Bieber, Usher, and a trail of whispers that refused to stay quiet anymore. Because let's be real for a second, this wasn't just some random disagreement at a party. This was tension that looked personal. Deep, the kind that doesn't come from one bad night, but from years of something building behind the scenes. When reports dropped that Justin and Usher had a heated exchange at that Oscars after-party hosted by Beyonce and Jay-Z, people didn't just react, they started connecting dots. Think about it. These two weren't just acquaintances. Usher wasn't just another artist. He was the person who helped bring Justin into the spotlight after Scooter Braun discovered him. That bond, that was supposed to be solid, unbreakable. So how do you go from that to barely being able to stand in the same room? That's where things start to get uncomfortable, because people started asking the obvious question, what happened between them that was so serious it turned admiration into distance? Why did Justin slowly pull away from someone who helped shape his entire career? And then the timeline started speaking louder than any interview ever could. Back in 2024, when Usher had one of the biggest stages in the world, the Super Bowl halftime show, he reportedly wanted Justin right there with him, a full circle moment, a reunion, the kind of performance fans would have gone crazy for. But Justin didn't show up. No explanation that really satisfied anyone, just absence. And now, looking back, that absence feels different, doesn't it? Because buried inside all of this is one decision, one move that at the time might have seemed harmless, maybe even strategic. But now, it's being questioned in a completely different light. When Justin was still young, still new, still trusting the people guiding him, Usher introduced him to Diddy. Not just introduced, handed him off for mentorship. A move that was supposed to elevate him, shape him, teach him the industry. But what if that mentorship wasn't what it seemed? Because that infamous moment, Justin spending 24 hours at Diddy's mansion, has never sat right with people. There's video evidence. You can see it. The shift, the energy, the way excitement slowly turns into something off, something uncomfortable. At first, Justin looked like any young artist stepping into a dream scenario. Smiling, curious, ready. But as time passed, that energy changed. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. That wasn't just a visit. That felt like the beginning of something he wasn't prepared for. And here's where it gets even heavier. Because after that period in his life, Justin changed.
All of these big deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. Any of them, all lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
And that transformation wasn't subtle. It wasn't small. It was dramatic, public, painful to watch. The boy who once seemed unstoppable suddenly looked like he was trying to escape something. Addiction, isolation, a sudden shift toward faith. A rushed marriage that felt less like romance and more like refuge. People saw it, but they didn't understand it. Until now. Because what if that wasn't just the pressure of fame? What if that was trauma trying to find a way out? And suddenly, another detail starts to make sense. Something that once seemed random, but now feels intentional.
As soon as you turn 16, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna let you rock this every time you come to LA. Yeah, this gonna be yours. So every time you get 18, you get the house. You get the mansion.
Okay, I get the mansion?
Yeah.
That protective instinct Justin showed toward Billie Eilish, that wasn't just kindness. That felt like someone who had seen something. Someone who understood what happens to young artists when they enter certain circles too early, too fast, without knowing the rules of the game. Because when you know, you know. And then comes the voice that refuses to stay quiet, Katt Williams. Now, love him or hate him, one thing nobody can deny, he's been saying things for years that people brushed off as jokes until they stopped sounding funny, because suddenly his words started lining up with real events, real patterns, real stories.
You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you try to get in contact with me, through all my, partners and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But you never really got my number, so.
Right. Okay.
My number?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you my number.
Yeah. Bad boy. Oh, he's bad boy now.
Signing the bad boy. Announcement.
Here's your icon alert.
And that's where everything takes a turn you can't ignore. Because Katt didn't just hint at shady mentorships. He claimed he was offered a place in that world multiple times. Massive money, power, opportunity, all dangling in front of him with conditions he refused to accept. And if what he's saying is true, then Justin wasn't just another artist being guided. He was being positioned, placed into a system that had already been operating long before him. And suddenly, Usher's role doesn't look as simple as it once did. Because people are now asking, did he know what he was doing when he connected Justin to Diddy? Or was he just repeating a cycle that started with him? Because here's the part that gets even more uncomfortable. Usher himself has long been linked to Diddy from a very young age, introduced into that same environment, that same mentorship structure, the same world that now raises eyebrows when people look back on it. And if you follow that thread, it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern where young talent gets pulled into circles that promise success but demand something in return. And the deeper you go, the harder it is to separate rumor from reality, because the stories start overlapping. Names, moments, interviews that suddenly feel incomplete. Even that one interview where Usher hinted at things he wasn't ready to say yet. That hesitation. That pause, that I'll save it for a book comment. Why hold back unless there's something worth hiding? And now, with everything resurfacing, people aren't just revisiting Justin's past, they're re-examining everyone connected to it. Because when one piece starts moving, the entire puzzle shifts. And what used to look like isolated incidents suddenly starts forming a picture that's impossible to ignore. A picture where mentorship doesn't always mean guidance, and success doesn't always come without a cost. And right now, that picture is getting clearer and messier by the second. And just when you think it couldn't possibly get any darker, it does. Because the deeper this story goes, the less it feels like coincidence and the more it starts to look like a system that's been operating quietly, right in front of everyone.
Protective of her. It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, will just turn their back on you in a second. So yeah, it's hard because I want her to know that, she can count on me. But at the end of the day, I'm never gonna force myself to be in a relationship with her. It has to be natural, right? So I just I don't want her to lose it. I don't want her to, go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. So yeah, if she ever needs me, I'm just a call away.
Now pause right there, because that moment alone changes everything. Suddenly, this isn't just about one artist, one situation, or one bad experience. This becomes a pattern stretching across names, across industries, across decades. When Katt brings up offers like that, explicit, bold, impossible to misunderstand, it forces you to ask a question nobody wants to say out loud. How many people said yes? Because if someone like him was approached that directly, that confidently, that publicly, then what about the ones who didn't have the same power to say no? What about the ones who were younger, less established, more dependent on the system to survive? And suddenly, Justin's story doesn't feel isolated anymore. It feels like a chapter in something much bigger. Because now people are revisiting everything, every clip, every interview, every uncomfortable moment that once got brushed off as just the industry being the industry. But now those same moments feel loaded, suspicious, like clues that were always there, just waiting for the right moment to be understood. And then comes the part that really shakes people. Because while all of this is surfacing, while accusations, patterns, and whispers are getting louder, Usher isn't distancing himself. He's not stepping back. He's not even staying neutral. He's defending Diddy. Let that sink in. In the middle of all this chaos, with everything being questioned, with names being dragged into conversations nobody can control anymore, Usher steps forward and openly shows support. Talks about legacy, talks about contributions, talks about how his personal experience doesn't match what the world is seeing. And that's where things get complicated. Because people aren't just listening to what he's saying, they're listening to what he's not saying. Why defend so strongly unless there's a reason? Why stay loyal in a moment where most people would create distance? Why hold on to that connection when it's clearly becoming a liability? And that's when the internet does what it always does. It starts digging. And what it finds? It doesn't calm things down, it makes them louder. Because this isn't the first time Usher has stood by controversial figures. His continued support of Russell Simmons, even after everything that pushed Russell to leave the country, already raised eyebrows. But now, stacked on top of everything else, it starts to form a pattern of loyalty that people don't fully understand. Or maybe they're starting to understand it too well. Because if Usher himself came up under Diddy's influence, if he was shaped, trained, mentored in that same environment from a young age, then what does that say about the choices he made later? What does that say about the way he handled Justin's introduction into that world? Was it guidance or was it repetition? And then those old rumors resurface, the ones that never fully disappeared, just faded into the background until now. Stories about what happened when Usher was younger, about his time living under Diddy's roof, about things he hinted at but never fully explained. That one moment during an interview where he got visibly uncomfortable when asked about what went on back then. That hesitation wasn't loud, but it was there. And now, looking back, it feels heavier than ever, because silence can say a lot when you know what to listen for. And then comes another layer that makes everything even harder to ignore. Allegations, lawsuits, names being pulled into legal documents that weren't meant to stay private forever. Usher being mentioned in connection to situations tied to Diddy, not as the main focus, but present enough to raise questions, enough to make people pause and wonder just how deep these connections go. Because proximity matters, and in a story like this, being close to the center means you've seen things, heard things, known things. And yet, the silence remains selective, which is exactly why people are now looking at Justin differently. Because if he experienced even a fraction of what's being suggested, then his behavior over the years stops looking random. It starts looking like survival, the distance from certain people, the sudden changes in lifestyle, the moments where he seemed lost, disconnected, like he was trying to figure himself out in real time. That wasn't just a young star struggling with fame. That was someone carrying something heavy enough to change him completely. And now that protective energy he shows toward younger artists, it hits different. It feels less like kindness and more like warning, like someone trying to break a cycle before it repeats. But here's where it gets even more unsettling, because not everyone is breaking away. Some are staying exactly where they've always been, still connected, still aligned, still defending. And that creates a split between those who distance themselves and those who double down. And in that split, the truth usually hides. Because people don't just stay loyal for no reason. Not at this level. Not with this much at stake. Loyalty like that is built on something deeper. Shared history, shared experiences, shared secrets. And if that's the case, then what we're seeing right now isn't just fallout. It's exposure, layer by layer, name by name, until eventually there's nowhere left to hide. And that's why this situation between Justin and Usher feels so important, because it's not just about them. It's about what they represent. One who seems to have stepped away, and one who stayed. One who changed, and one who didn't. One who looks like he's been trying to escape, and one who looks like he's still protecting something. And when you put those two paths side by side, the contrast contrast is impossible to ignore, because if everything being said, hinted at, and slowly revealed is even partially true, then this isn't just a story about fame, it's a story about what fame costs, who pays the price, and who benefits from it. And right now, it feels like we're only seeing the beginning, because the more people start talking, the more those old clips resurface, the more patterns start connecting, the harder it becomes to dismiss any of this as coincidence. So now the real question isn't whether something happened. The real question is, how much of it are we about to find out next?